Gemini is Google's most advanced artificial intelligence. In December 2023, Google published on YouTube this video, Gemini, Unlocking Insights in Scientific Literature, where Google demonstrates how Gemini's artificial intelligence can be used to assist scientific research. In this video, I present my summary and key points, and I pay special attention to how Google scientists got Gemini to give them the results that they wanted. Gemini, Unlocking Insights in Scientific Literature. In summary, the Google scientists had over 200,000 scientific papers to review. They got Gemini to reduce this number down to 250, extract key data, and generate a graph. They did this in two phases. Gemini is multimodal, so it can process information in different forms. It can process different types of information: text, code, image, audio, video. Phase one, which I call text phase, started with their over 200,000 scientific papers. By using prompts, they asked Gemini to filter for relevant papers. Gemini successfully reduced the number from over 200,000 to 250. Then, using prompts, the Google scientists asked Gemini to extract key data and add annotations and citations so that the scientists could check Gemini's work. That resulted in the data set that they desired. Then they entered into phase two. The goal of phase two was to generate a graph. They started off by uploading a screenshot of an old graph. Then they asked Gemini to generate a computer code required to plot the old graph, so the code to plot graphs. Then they took the new data set from phase one and plugged it in to this code to plot an updated graph. So looking at the YouTube video, on this particular screen frame here, the Google scientist is discussing their problem. They have to go through over 200,000 papers, which would be very difficult to be done manually by humans. So this is an example of the first prompt, and this page to me is the most important screen frame of the video because it shows the way to engineer prompts. So in the top here, in the red lettering, they start off by giving Gemini a persona. They say, you are a research assistant. You are a helpful bio-curation assistant. Your job is, and they give the job duties of Gemini, and they say, here are some things to keep in mind. They give it some parameters, some background. So they're giving Gemini an identity, and also what they're looking for. Then, so this is a background, but then there's actually two prompts here in green. Evaluate a paper that we know is relevant to the study. Evaluate a paper that we know is not relevant to the study. So they gave the persona, the background, what they're looking for, the specifications. Then they gave Gemini the actions. Find the studies that are relevant and find the studies that are not relevant. So that reduced the 200,000, that filter reduced the 200,000 to 250. Papers that were relevant. So Gemini successfully said the 200,000, here's 250 that are relevant, and then the remainder are not relevant. So then the scientists disregarded the irrelevant papers and said, Gemini, now focus on the 250 papers that are relevant. And they asked it to extract key data and add annotations. So from 250 to 250, now looking at the relevant 250 papers, they asked Gemini to extract the key data to generate a data set, but this is where they asked it to do annotations, citations. So they could then click on these annotations and see where Gemini got its information so they could check Gemini's work. And this was the final result of phase 1. These were the 250 relevant papers, and this was the key data extracted from all these papers. So each row is a paper. Next, they entered into phase 2. The point of phase 2 was to use this new information, this new data set, to generate a graph. So what they did was this. They gave Gemini a screenshot of an old graph from a previous paper that had a similar topic. So here's a graph. Then they gave the graph to Gemini, and they asked Gemini, generate the code, the computer code required to plot the old graph. So basically, they asked Gemini to generate a plotting program, the code. Gemini did that, and then what they did was they fed the data set from phase 1 and put it into this computer program to plot a new graph. So here's an example of their process, and it resulted in this. On the left was the original graph. Notice how the time date goes up to 2019. And then the updated Gemini figure takes the data from the previous year and then extends it into 2023. So the data after 2019 is the new information that Gemini generated. And this is an example of Gemini's multimodal capabilities beyond text. It can generate programming code to make a graph, and then it can present information in a visual format.